Hello friends, today we are gonna create a beautiful portfolio website using React and Framer Motion, and you will learn tons of React animations. When I refresh the page, you can see this transition. We will have this animated button and this sliding text behind, and here we have a menu button. When I click, this circle expands and shows our links, and this button changes shape. And we will create these animations for the list items. And after that, we will create this parallax section, and you will see how easy to create these kind of effects using React. In this section, we will have this transition and some hover effects, another parallax, and here we have our projects. When I scroll down or up, we will see this animated progress bar and this text transition. Finally, we will create a contact section, and you'll learn how to animate SVGs easily. And this contact form is functional. When a user sends a message, you will receive that immediately in your mailbox. It's a great project to understand animation basics, transitions, scroll effects, framer hooks, responsive design, and more. And at the end of the video, we will deploy this website using Hostinger. As you know, it's the hosting sponsor of Lama Dev, and I create different projects using Hostinger every month on this channel. And for this project, we will be using business hosting plan. You can create 100 projects using this plan, and you will get unlimited bandwidth, a free domain, and a free SSL at this price. Choose a time period here, and if you use the link in the description below and Lama Dev coupon code here, you'll get an extra discount. After purchasing, you are ready to claim your free domain. I will say animated portfolio. Let's claim. After the registration, let's get back to the dashboard and install our hosting. Create an empty website. I'll choose my domain and finish the setup. It's gonna install your hosting, and when it's ready, you can open up the H panel. And in this panel, you can manage your websites and domains. You can set up email with your domain name. And using this file manager, you can deploy your websites. So if you are ready, let's create our application and deploy it here. Okay, let's open up VS Code and create a new project. And inside this project, we will install our React application. To do that, you can open up your terminal and say npm create with, and it's gonna install a new application. But I recommend you to use this GitHub repository and this starter branch, because here we don't have any unnecessary files and codes. We are gonna create everything from scratch. And also we have all the images that we are gonna use during this tutorial, and the font family. And also, if you watch this video after the release date, you are not gonna have any errors because you will be using exactly the same versions of the libraries. So it's gonna be much easier to follow this tutorial. But how we are gonna install this? The best option is to fork this repo and work with your own repository. After clicking here, it's gonna create your own repository, and on your own repository, just come here and copy your link and say git clone and your link. But in my repository, I'm using multiple branches. The first one will be this starter branch, and at the end of the video, I'm gonna create the completed version of the project. So I have to provide which branch I'm using. So I will say single branch and the branch name, starter. But if you fork this project, you don't need to do this. Just copy your URL and say git clone and your URL. Okay. I want to install everything inside this project, so I will say dot and enter. Okay, they are here, but we don't have our libraries. Let's install. I'll say npm install, and it's ready to start. I will say npm run dev. Or if you are using yarn run dev. Let's open up this URL. And our website is ready. Before creating any component, let's see the main structure of our application. As you can see, we have this hero section, this Parallax, services section, and portfolio sections, and finally this contact section. And between each section, we are using snap scroll transition. So the height of each section will be 100 VH, and they will contain all this screen. And after, we will be able to give this effect. Let's do that. Let's create our sections. I will come here and open up my application. Let's close here and close this sidebar. And I'm going to create my first section. Let's say hero section, Parallax, services, another one, our projects, let's say portfolio, 1, 2, 3, and finally contacts. So let's create our CSS file, but in this project, we are not going to use directly CSS. We are going to be using Sass. I'm going to open up my terminal and I will say npm install Sass. And I want to give here the version number is going to be 1.68.0. Why I'm doing this? Because as I told you, if you watch this video after, let's say 1 year, you might have some problems if you are using different versions. This is how we can prevent this. I will say enter. Okay, let's shrink this back and create our file. I'll say app.scss. Let's import app.scss. Okay. Of course, you don't have to use Sass, you can directly use CSS, but it's gonna make everything much faster. We don't have to give class name for each item. When we start creating our styles, you are gonna understand better. So let's come here and say section, and each section will be 100 VH. Let's see. As you can see, hero and others. Okay. But how we are gonna create this scroll effect? It's really easy. I will come here and say HTML. So it's gonna apply for our whole document, and I will say scroll snap type. We are gonna scroll on the y-axis, and I will say mandatory. And I'm gonna give scroll behavior, and it's gonna be smooth. So when we scroll, the animation will be a little bit slower, and it's gonna look better. And here I will say scroll snap align, and it's gonna be center. Let's see. I will scroll. As you can see, I'm just touching and it shows another section. Perfect. It's that easy, guys. By the way, I can give some default styles. For example, there is a space here. Let's remove that. I will say padding will be 0, margin will be 0, and box sizing will be border box. As you can see, there is no space. And I want to change this font family. If you remember, we are using Google fonts and this font family. Let's add it here. And it's going to be DM Sans. And perfect. Let's give our default background color. As you can see, it's going to be this dark color. Let's choose body. And background color will be, let me copy this. It's going to be this color. And the default text color will be light gray. Okay. And when we create any link here, let's see. And let's scroll here. As you can see, it has a default color and this underline. Let me zoom in. Okay, let's remove that. I'm doing this in app CSS because it's going to apply for each component. So we don't have to write it again and again. So I will say text decoration, none, and the color will be inherit. It basically means take the color from the parent. And in this case, our parent is this body and it's going to be light gray, like this. Okay. Let's zoom out and let's create our first component. As you can see, we are going to have this navbar and after that this hero section. Let's come here and create a new folder and it's going to be components. And I will say navbar, inside navbar JSX and CSS. Let's create our function and import our file, CSS file, navbar.scss. I will give here my class name and let's use this in our app. Inside this section, I will say navbar and let's see what we are going to have. Firstly, we are going to create one more component here and it's going to be our navigation bar. And after that, we are going to have this logo and those items. So let's close here and here. And I will say add here sidebar that we are going to create later. And after we are going to have a wrapper. And inside this wrapper, we are going to have our logo and social icons. So let's say span. I will just say Lama Dev. You can write your name or whatever you want. And after that, I will say links or let's say social. And inside, we are going to have our links. You can write here your social media address, but I'm going to leave it empty. And inside, I'm going to create an image. And the first image will be this Facebook icon. And after that, we are going to add the others. Okay. So I will say Facebook. And I'm going to duplicate this link. And I'm going to write my other images. Okay. Firstly, let's give a height for our navbar. In this example, it's 100 pixels. And after that, I'm going to center this wrapper. We are going to have space here and here. I will say height 100. And inside navbar, we have wrapper. This is why we are using sass. As you can see, we can write our items inside the parent. And I will say maximum width is going to be this size. It's one of the most popular breakpoint. And I will say margin auto and it's going to center our item like that. And let's separate our logo and those links. To do that, we can use flexbox. So our items will be horizontal. Let's center them vertically. Align items center like that. But I want to separate them. So the logo will be at the beginning and our links will be at the end of the component. To do that, I will say justify content space between. Perfect. Let's give a style for this logo. Did I give class name or not? Okay, actually we don't need. We have only one span here. So I will say span font weight bold. Okay, and what about those icons? Let's check. As you can see, they are smaller and there is a space between each item. So we can use flexbox again. Let's come here and say social, display flags, and gap between each item will be 20 pixels. Like that. Let's make them smaller. I'll say image tag, and they are gonna be 18 pixels. Okay, but as you can see, this wrapper is not centered. Let's check. Because as you can see, its height is not 100%. So I will come here and say 100% and perfect. Okay. So right now, let's see how we can give animation. To do that, we are going to be using Framer Motion. Let's open up our terminal and install our library, npm install Framer Motion. And again, I'm going to write my version. And let's install. Okay, it's ready. So let me show you how we can use Framer Motion. To do that, let's actually create here a temporary component. Actually, I can write it here. And I will say test. And let's use it here. I'm gonna comment this out and write my test. Let's come back and close this sidebar. And inside, I'm gonna create a box. Let's give a class name for the parent. I will say crash course or just course. And I'm gonna try to animate this box. Let's give some style first. Let's write quickly. It's gonna be 100 VH, and I'm gonna center everything. And for the box, let's give width and height. And it's gonna be white. Okay. When you don't use any library like Framer Motion, you have to come here and create a transition and write here your transform name and the duration and the animation timing function. And after, you have to write here transform and choose your effect. And if you want to give some complex animation, you have to create an animation and give some keyframes. And you cannot trigger your animations whenever you want. If you want to do that, you have to write it in your component and use conditional styles. And it takes a lot of time. To prevent this, we are going to be using Framer Motion. And using this library, we will be able to give some animations, drag and drop effects, scroll behaviors, like that, and some path animations, SVG animations. It's really easy to use. As you can see, only thing we should do is replace our HTML elements with these motion HTML elements. So if you are using div, you should just write here motion.div. If you are using h1 tag, it's gonna be motion.h1 tag. And after that, you can give this animate property and write your effects here. Let's try. I will say motion.div. Of course, I have to import first. I will say motion from Framer Motion. And I will say animate. And inside this object, I'm gonna say opacity, for example. It's gonna be 0. As you can see, it's not here. Let's refresh the page. And we have this little animation. If you want to make it longer, you can use transition. And inside this object, you can give any duration. Let's say 2 seconds. I will refresh. As you can see, it takes 2 seconds. And you can give any delay, for example. It's going to be 2 seconds also. In this case, it's going to wait 2 seconds to apply this transition effect. Let's refresh. As you can see, it's here. After 2 seconds, it starts our animation. And what else you can do? You can give here the initial state. Let's say at the beginning opacity will be 0 and scale will be 0.5. And after that, we are going to increase this opacity and the scale will be 1. Let's see. I will refresh. As you can see, it's going to wait 2 seconds and after it's going to start our animation. And you can write here any animation you want. Let's say X, for example, and it's going to move our box on the X axis. And I will say 200 pixels, for example. Let's actually delete this delay. And I will refresh. And perfect. I can do the same thing for Y-axis. 500. Perfect. And what else you can do? You can actually trigger your animation. What I mean by that, let's delete those. And this animate. I will say while hover. As you can see, we have many options here. While hover means when we hover over our item, when we click, when we hold our item and drag, and when it's in the viewport. But for now, let's create hover effect. And I will say opacity will be 1, scale, let's say 2. Of course, inside this object, let's refresh. Of course, it's not here because opacity is 0. Let's make this 0.5 at the beginning. Okay, I will hover over. As you can see, it works as you expected. And I can do the same thing for while tap. When I hover over, nothing is changing, but if I click, as you can see, it works. And I can give here drag property. And in this case, I can hold my item and move it wherever I want. Let's comment this out and you can see better. Like that. And when I release, as you can see, it's going to have this effect. Of course, you can create here any border. And what else? Actually, let me show you this while in view also. As you can see, it works directly because we can see this item in our viewport. But if I come here and create one more test, and when I scroll, and when I see my box, as you can see, only after that it's gonna start working. And when I scroll up, I'm gonna see my item again. Perfect. So when it's not in the viewport, not in this screen, its position will be the initial position. And as soon as we see our item, it's gonna start our animation. So what else we have? I can show these variants. If you have some complex animation or many items inside your initial state or the animation state, you might want to create here your variants. I will say for visible, its opacity will be 1, and if it's hidden, it's gonna be 0. And we can use those variants in our framer element. I'm gonna delete them, and I will say variants. I'm gonna pass it here. And I will say the initial state will be hidden and the animate will be visible. As you can see, it's really quick because we don't have any duration. So you can give your transition here. Okay. And the best thing is you can actually use any condition. So instead of those, initial and animate, I can come here and write animate and write here any condition. Let's create a state here. For example, I will say open, set open, use state hook. At the beginning, it's going to be false. And let's create here a button. When we click here, we are going to switch our state. So I will say on click, set open. If it's false, it's going to be true. If it's true, it's going to be false. And I can write my condition here. I will say if it's open, make this visible. If it's not, hidden. Let's refresh. As you can see, it's hidden. I'll click and it's here. Again. Perfect. And also you can give your transition here directly inside your variant. So let's say X, and I will say transition, and the duration will be again 2 seconds. I will click. And for hidden, as you can see, it's not 2 seconds. It's the default duration. And what else? You can give here the transition type. And by default, it's twin. But also you can make this spring. It's one of my favorite effects. Let's click. As you can see, it's going much faster. It's passing the line and after coming back. Actually, let's make this smaller. I will click. As you can see, this effect. But if you are using spring, you cannot give here duration. It's not gonna work. Instead, you can use stiffness. Let's say 200. If I make this 2000, for example, it's gonna be much faster. And if I make this 100, it's gonna be slower. And you can also use damping. It's the strength of the opposing force. By default, it's 10, but let's make it 100. I will refresh and click. And as you can see, it's hard to move this item. And if you want to learn more transition effects, you can just check the documentation. But for now, it's enough. Actually, let me show one more thing. Let's delete everything here. And I'm gonna create a list. I'll say motion UL. And inside list item. Actually, let's create here our items. It's gonna be an array. Item 1, item 2, 3, and 4. Let's use them here. I will say items.map, and for each item, I'm gonna use this list item. There is a warning because we don't have unique key. It's gonna be item, and inside this li, I'm gonna show my items. Just like this. Let me zoom in. And let's give our variants for the UL. It's gonna be 1, let's say 100. Hidden will be opacity 0. Let's use them here. Initial will be hidden. And animate will be visible. Of course, we should pass our variants. Let's delete this transition for now. I will refresh and our animation is here. But how we are gonna apply the same animation for each item here? To do that, you can use exactly the same variants for each item. Let's add it here. And I will come here and inside this transition, I will say staggered children. And I'm gonna give the duration here. Basically, before starting animation for each item, it's gonna wait this duration. Let's see, you are going to understand better. I will refresh the page. As you can see, it works our animation for our list, and after first item, it waits 200 milliseconds after item 2, after item 3 and 4. You can increase or decrease this number, let's say 1 second. I will refresh. And perfect. And also, you can use dynamic variants. In this case, you can take any variable you want. Let me wrap this. And using this item, you can make some calculations. Let's say delay, for example, and it's going to be I multiplied by 0.3. How we are going to pass this I will just say custom, and I can send the index number of our items. To do that, let's take our index and pass it here. Basically, the index number for the first item is 0, 1, 2, 3. And using those numbers, we are going to calculate this delay. And in this case, we will be able to give specific transition for each item. Let's try. I will refresh. Perfect. And this is how you can pass any variable here. Okay, that's enough, I think. You know how it works, how to give animations, how to use variants. Right now we are ready to give some animations here. Let me zoom out. Let's refresh. As you can see, we are just giving scale effect. Let's do that. I can delete them. And open up my sections. And let's give an animation for this span. Firstly, I'm going to say motion. Let's import. And I will say initial opacity will be 0 and scale will be 0.5. We are doing exactly the same thing. I will copy this and paste here, and it's going to be animate, and transition will be duration 0.5, and let's see. Okay, it's not here because I didn't change the animate. It's going to be 1 and 1. And perfect. And you can do exactly the same thing for these icons, but it can stay like that. Let me show you this sidebar animation. As you can see, at the beginning it's going to be a circle, and when I click here, it's going to open up and show our items. Let's do that. I'm going to open up my sidebar and create a new component. Let's say sidebar. I will quickly create my CSS. Like that. Let's create our class name. Oops, there's a typo. Let's fix it. And here. Okay. Let's use this sidebar here. And let's see what we are going to have. Firstly, inside this sidebar, we are going to create this background. It's going to be a circle. And when I click on this button, we are going to expand this circle, and its shape will be this rectangle. And it's going to include our links inside. And this toggle button will be an SVG. As you can see, there will be 3 lines. And when I click here, the second item will be invisible, and we are going to change the position of the first and third item. Let's create them. Inside this sidebar, I'm going to create a new div, and it's going to be background. Basically, it's going to be our circle, and inside we are going to have our links, And after this, I'm gonna create a button. Actually, for those links and for this button, I can create new components, but I'm not gonna create them inside components because they belong to sidebar. So I will say toggle button links, and let's create our files. Like that. And links component. Okay, let's use them here. Toggle button and links. Let's open up our CSS. We are gonna have background. Inside we will have our links. After this background, we are gonna create a button. It's gonna be this toggle button. Actually, let's change here. It's gonna be a button. And inside this, we are gonna have SVG. But I'm gonna do this later because we are gonna need this animation. Firstly, we are gonna create our variants. But before, let's give our initial styles. Firstly, I'm gonna use display flags. Flags direction will be column. And I'm gonna center my items. And background color will be white. And the text color will be black. And what about this BG? When I scroll down or up, as you can see, it stays here. It means its position will be fixed. Let's do that. Position fixed. I should give any location. And I will say maximum width will be 400 pixels. So when we open up this background, this size will be 400. If you want to, you can make it smaller or bigger. It's up to you. Let's give background. It's gonna be white. And what about this button? Again, it's gonna be fixed. But before, let's give width and height. It's gonna be a circle. I will say position fixed. I'm gonna center this. And I'm gonna delete the default background color. It's gonna be transparent. And let's delete the default border. And that's all for now. Actually, we can give style for this list also. I will say position absolute. Let's give width and height. Display flags, flags direction column, because it's gonna be vertical. And between each item, I'm gonna give 20 pixels. Let's center them first. And gap will be 20. Let's write here something for now. And for each link, I'm gonna increase this size. Let's say anchor tag, and font size will be bigger, like that. Okay. As you can see, we don't have any shape yet. So let's create our variant. Let's close everything and open up our sidebar. And I will say const variants. We are going to have two options, open and closed. To decide this, of course, we are going to need a use state hook. Const open, set open. At the beginning, it's going to be false. When we click on this button, we are going to change it. So let's pass our function here. And let's take it as a prop. And right here on click event, when I click on this button, I'm going to change my state. Let's take the previous state and right here the opposite. Okay. So let's write here motion div, and I'm going to import I can do the same thing for this div. And I'm gonna write my condition here. Animate. If it's open, the animation will be open. If it's not, it's gonna be hidden. Sorry, closed. So since we are using this animation inside our parent, it's gonna apply for all the children. So I can write my variants here. So if the animation of the parent is open, it's gonna choose the variant open. If it's closed, it's gonna be variant closed. Okay. And when it's closed, its shape will be this circle. To do that, I'm gonna use clip path. If you don't know what the clip path is, you can watch my CSS video. Basically, it allows us to create any custom shape. If you watch that video, you are gonna understand better. And I'm gonna create here a circle. I'm gonna give the position, and I can give any transition here. Of course, there's a warning because we don't have any open object, and comma here. And I will say transition. Remember what we can give here. We can give delay. We can change the type. It's gonna be spring. But remember, to change its speed, we cannot use duration. We have to give stiffness. Let's say 400. And damping. Of course, you can just play around here. You don't have to use exactly the same numbers. And what about here? When it's open, again, clip path is going to be circle inside quote. And its size will be much bigger. And since we are using width here, let's check. As you can see, the maximum width will be 400 pixels. And it's gonna overflow, and we are gonna see it as a rectangle. If we don't give this width, it's gonna be a circle, but really huge one. Again, positions. And I can give different transition. Type will be spring again. And stiffness is going to be smaller. Let's see. Okay, there is something wrong. Position fixed. Let's center this. I will give bottom also. And where is our button? Oh, it's here. There is something wrong with the position. Top, of course, it's gonna be left. And perfect. Let's give cursor pointer so we can click. When I click, as you can see, the animation works and we can see our links. But why it's not centered? Oh, I didn't give class name. Okay, perfect. Let's give our links. I can create here an array. I will say items. First one will be homepage. Services. Portfolio. Contact. And let's say about. We don't have about page, but anyway. And let's use them here. Items.map. And for each item, I'm gonna show an anchor tag. And we can pass here our item. Actually, let's use it like that. Hashtag and item. And a unique key here is gonna be item again. And the name will be here. Okay. Why I'm doing this? That because when I click here, it's gonna open up our section. If you check the link on the bottom left, you are going to see the URL. We are going to give different IDs for each section, and when we click them, it's going to scroll to that section. To do that, let's open up our home page, app.js, and for each section, I'm going to give different ID. Home page, services, you can use it here or here. Let's write it here. Portfolio and contact. Let's try. I'm gonna click. As you can see, it's moving. Perfect. This is what we want. So what about this button? Let me copy my SVG. I'm gonna close my sidebar, and inside I'm gonna paste my SVG. As you can see, we are gonna have 3 lines, and I'm gonna give different path location for each item. Let's check and zoom in. And at the beginning, they all are gonna be lines, but when I click here, I'm gonna remove this second item and change the position of the first and third item. So let's use motion for them. And let's import here. And remember, our parent has this Animate property, and it can be either open or closed. And using those items, we can create our own variants. Let's do that. I will say variants, and I will say if it's closed, D will be this path. And when it's open, it's gonna be this path. If you don't know SVGs, it can be a little bit confusing for you. Basically, this D represents the shape of this path. I will save. And as you can see, its shape is crossed. But when I click here, it's gonna be straight. And you don't have to memorize anything. Basically, using an application like Figma, you can create your own shapes. And when you create any shape here, and export this as SVG and open it with your VS Code, you are gonna see its path. This is how we are using SVGs. And I can do the same thing for the third item. I will just copy and paste. I will refresh. Like that. And for the second item, I'm gonna give its shape directly, but when it's open, its opacity will be 0. When it's closed, it's gonna be 1. As you can see, it's here. When I click, the opacity will be 0. Okay. And for those items, I can give different effects. Let's check. I will zoom out. I will click. And as you can see, there's an animation here. Let's give that. I'm gonna open up links. And let's create our variants. Actually, we can define our variants before our component. So let's do the same thing for others. Okay, we are giving inner variants. We don't need to do anything. And let's say if it's open, transition will be staggered children. And when it's closed, it's gonna be faster. And also I can change the direction. If I say -1, it's gonna be the opposite direction. Let's check. When I click, as you can see, my items are coming from bottom to up, but when I close, up to bottom. Let's give our motion here, motion div, and import. And I'm gonna write here my variants. Let's create different variants here. I'm gonna duplicate this, and it's gonna be item variants. Again, it should be open and closed, and I can write here my animations. Firstly, Y will be 0. Remember, it comes from bottom, so I will say 50 pixels, for example. And when I open, it's gonna be 0. And also I can give opacity. It's gonna be 1 and 0. Let's use them here. Variants, item variants, of course, it should be motion. I will refresh and let's try. Okay, there is no stagger, there is something wrong. Oh, I said staggered. It's gonna be stagger. Okay, perfect. If you want to, you can give different transition, stiffness, speed, whatever you want. Just play around here. And one more thing, when I hover over, I'm gonna give different animation. It's gonna be really easy, remember. While hover, the scale will be 1.1. It's gonna be bigger. And when I click on this item, while tap, scale will be smaller. Let's say 0.95. Okay, when I click, as you can see, it's getting smaller and showing to portfolio section. Okay, awesome. And let's create our hero section. We are gonna have our texts, this image, and this animated text. Let's create. I will close everything and open up my sidebar. And inside components, I will say hero. I'm gonna import hero.scss and give my class name here and create my style file. Okay. Firstly, I'm gonna give a height, but remember the section height is 100 VH, but we have navbar here and its height is 100 pixels. So I'm gonna make some calculation here. I will say height calculate 100 VH minus 100 pixels. And I'm gonna give a background color here because in our example, the bottom is lighter. So I'm gonna give linear gradient. Let's say background, not background color. And linear gradient will be 180 degrees. So it's gonna start from the top. It's gonna be this color. And the bottom will be this color. Okay, let's add this component to our application. After navbar, I will say hero. Perfect. Let's create our image here. I will say image container and inside image, and let's see what was the name. Okay, hero PNG. As you can see, it's overflowing. Let me open this CSS file here. And I will say overflow hidden. And I'm gonna give a position for this item. It's gonna be on the right side. Let's write here. Our container, image container. Height will be 100% and the position will be absolute. Top will be 0, right will be 0, So it's gonna be on the right side, like that. But as you can see, it starts from here because we didn't use position relative for the parent. And perfect. And what about those texts? Let's create a container. And inside I'm going to create h2 tag. Let's actually copy and paste them. h1 tag, developer and designer. You can write here whatever you want. And two buttons here. Let's create a div. I will say buttons. See the latest work or works, and contact me. And finally, we are going to have this image. After that, we are going to give our animation. Let's say image. And what was the name? Let me check. Okay, scroll PNG. Okay, as you can see, it starts from the beginning. But in our example, there is a space here. So we are going to give exactly the same size as we did for this navbar. Basically, we are going to have a wrapper. We are going to give a maximum width, and we are going to center that wrapper. Like that. Let's write it here. Wrapper. Remember our breakpoint. Height will be 100%. And I'm going to center this. Oops. Okay, I didn't save. And perfect. So let's give style for this container. Inside wrapper, I'm going to say text container. Height will be 100%, so I can center my items. Let's use flexbox. It's going to be vertical, of course. And justify content will be center. And space between each item will be 40 pixels. Oops, this image is too big. Let's say image is going to be 50 pixels. Perfect. And let's give style for h2 tag, h1 tag, and those buttons. Before this image, I will say h2. It's our username. And the color will be this purple color. Okay. And in our example, as you can see, there is a space between each item, each letter. So I will say letter spacing 10 pixels. Okay, perfect. And what about this h1 tag? It's gonna be much bigger. Like that. But as you can see, since we didn't give any width for our wrapper, it goes behind this image. To prevent this, I can give any width. Let's say 50%. Perfect. And what about those buttons? After h1, before image. For each button, I'm going to give padding and a border. Solid and white. Let's give border radius 10 pixels. Okay, as you can see, there is a background here. Let's remove this. Background color will be transparent. And text color will be white again. Perfect. Let's separate them. I can give margin right here, or if you want to, you can give here display flags and gap. Awesome. And I'm gonna give cursor pointer. Okay. Let's check. Those font weights are a little bit smaller, I think. Let's give 300. Okay. Only thing we should create is this sliding text. Let's write it somewhere here. Container, and inside I'm gonna write my text. Content creator and influencer. Let's give style. After this image, I will say position absolute. Font size will be really big. It's gonna be the half of the screen. And I can give any position here. I will say bottom 0. But even if I set 0, there's a default space here. Actually, let's say minus 120. Perfect. Still space, but it's okay. But I want to see them in just one line. So I will say white space, no wrap. And let's give here a color and decrease its opacity. Actually, I can directly paste here. It's a black color, but as you can see, the opacity is really low, like that. And right now I can give my animations. I'm gonna close this CSS file and I'm gonna create my text variants. Initial x minus 500 and the opacity will be 0. Of course, const. And the animate will be x0 and opacity will be 1. Let's give transition. It's gonna take 1 second. And stagger children 0.1. So let's use this here. For text container, I will copy this, paste for this h2 tag, h1 tag, buttons, and for this scroll image, and let's add motion. Like that. I'm gonna quickly import motion. And let's give initial and animate. It's gonna be initial. Oops, equals. Okay, so all the children will be exactly the same. Let's try. I will refresh and perfect. And what about this image? As you can see, there's a different animation here. We can write it here actually. I will say scroll button or scroll animation, whatever you say. Opacity will be 0 and Y will be 10 pixels and transition. It's gonna take 2 seconds, but as you realize, this animation is infinite. It doesn't stop anywhere. So I will say repeat infinity and let's use it here. Where is our image? Here. I will say animate scroll button. I will refresh and perfect. What about this animated text? Let's create another variant. I will duplicate this. And it's gonna be slider variants. At the beginning, the x will be 0. I will remove this. And it's gonna be, let's give really high number here, just like 220%, because we have a really long text. And I'm gonna remove this opacity. Again, repeat will be infinity. Duration will be 20 seconds. And let's remove here. I will refresh. Of course, I didn't give these variants for my item. I'm gonna give the initial animation and animate. And of course, it's gonna be motion div. I will refresh. As you can see, it's going to the right side. To prevent this, it's gonna be minus. Let's refresh. Okay, but at the end of the text, it's not coming back. Let's handle this. I'll say repeat type, and it's gonna be mirror. And I'm gonna give width for my item. Where is our slider? Here. It's gonna be 50%. And I will give font weight, and it's gonna be bold. Let's refresh, and perfect. When it ends, it will come back. Okay. And what about this parallax? As you remember, we have two types of parallax. First one is what we do, and the background is dark. And this one is what we did, and the background is a little bit lighter. And we have a sun here. So basically, we are gonna need a prop. Let's close everything here and open up Parallax. Of course, we didn't create. Let's create quickly. JSX. I'm gonna import my style. Like that. Let's give class name. Okay. Let's use it in our app.js. It's gonna be here and here, and its type will be portfolio, and it's gonna be services. Okay, let's take this type as a prop, and I'm gonna create here h1 tag and write my condition. If type equals services, it's gonna be what we do. If it's not, it's gonna be what we did. I'm gonna create a div, and it's gonna show those mountains. And one more div is gonna be those planets. And one more, and it's gonna be stars. So let's give condition for our background color. I'll say inner style, background, and if the type is services, it's gonna be linear gradient. Actually, let's just copy this, and it's gonna be, of course, question mark. And if it's not, it's gonna be this linear gradient. If you remember our hero section, we gave this background color. It starts from dark to light, and we will use this color at the beginning. And if the type is services, it's gonna be darker. If it's not, it's gonna be lighter. Let's open up our CSS, and let's say with 100%, height 100%, and let's see. As you can see, light to dark and dark to light. Okay, let's give background images for our items. We are going to be using position absolute for our mountains, planets, and stars. So I will say position relative, And inside we have our title, let's say 100 pixels. And of course, I'm going to center this title, display flags, align item center, justify content center. And after that, let's create our background images. Background size will be cover. It's going to cover all our screen. And the background position will be bottom. It's going to start from here. Okay, it's not here because we don't have any width and height. And we are going to use position absolute. Okay, perfect. Let's do the same thing for other images. Planets and stars. Awesome. And when I scroll down, I'm gonna give this effect. So let's import motion. I'm gonna close them. Import motion from Framer motion. Let's use them here. And right now we are gonna learn something new. We are gonna need the position of the beginning of our section. Let's come here. And this point will be our initial position. It's gonna be 0. And when I scroll down, that initial state will be increasing. And using that number, I'm gonna move my items. By the way, there is something wrong here. As you can see, stars are over those mountains. To prevent this, I'm gonna give Z index. It's gonna be 3. Let's copy this. It's gonna be 2 and 1. Okay. But how am I gonna reach to that number? It's really easy. Let's come here and I'm gonna import one more thing here. And it's gonna be useScroll. Using this hook, I will be able to reach to my y-axis progress. I will say const scroll y progress. useScroll hook. And here I'm gonna give my target. And as I said, this target will be our section, this whole section. Basically this div. To reach this target, we are going to be using useRef hook, const ref, useRef. It comes from React. Let's use it here. And I'm going to pass it here. And using this progress, I can give my animations. To do that, we can use useTransform hook. And using this hook, we can create different transitions. How we are going to do this? Let's say const ybg and use transform hook. I'm going to pass this scroll y progress and I'm going to map my scroll progress. What I mean by that? Let's open up useTransform. So let's check here. As you can see, we are creating here new motion value and we are passing here a value. If the x is 0, let me zoom in, the output will be 1. It means opacity will be 1. If it's 100, the output will be 0. And if it's in the middle, if it's 50, it's going to be between 0 and 1, which means 0.5. In this point, the progress is 0. And when I scroll down and come to the end, this point will be 1. And I can map through all the points between this range and create a new value. You are going to understand better right now. I'm gonna take this value. It's gonna be between 0 and 1. And if it's 0, the position of my item will be 0%. If it's 1, it's gonna be 100%. So using this value, I can add my animation. For this h1 tag, let's say inner style, y will be ybg. Let's see. As you can see, there is something wrong because we didn't write here any offset. It's gonna be start start and end start. What this basically means is the animation starts when the top of the target element reaches the top of the viewport. Basically this point. It's on the top of the viewport and our animation is gonna end when the top of the target element reaches the bottom of the viewport. So if this point reaches here, when I scroll down, as you can see, it's there, our animation is gonna end. And as you can see, we have this parallax effect. And using this transform, I can control my animation speed. As you can see, if our target is 0, the Y position will be 0%. When our animation ends, at this point, the position of this text will be 500%. This is how we can control this speed. And you can create multiple transforms. Let's say text, it's 500 and BG will be 100%. And I will say text. So I can do the same thing for my planets. By BG. And I can do the same thing for those stars. But in this case, we are gonna move on the x-axis. Let's copy this, paste here, but it's gonna be x. It's that easy, guys. And when I scroll more, it's gonna overflow because their positions are more than the size of this section. To prevent this, I will just say overflow hidden. Okay, perfect. But as you realize, our sidebar is not here. Let's open up sidebar. And I'm gonna write here the index is gonna be over everything. Oh, sorry, it's not sidebar. It's gonna be BG because its position is fixed. Perfect. And I can do the same thing for this button. And awesome. Okay. Let's see. By the way, we are going to change this planet. Let's write another condition here. And I will say style background image. And it's going to be URL. And let's write our condition. If the type is services, it's going to be this image. If it's not, it's going to be sun PNG. Of course, we already have style here. Let's move this here and remove this one. Okay, and perfect. If you want to, you can play around those speeds, or you can move your items different directions, whatever you want. And the best way to learn animation is making practice. Just use your imagination and create something else. Okay, I can close everything and let's see what else we have. Okay, let's create this services component. I'm going to open up sidebar and services. JSX, style, and like that. Let's use it in our app here. I'm gonna import, and that's all. Let's see. Okay, it's here. So what we are gonna create here? We are gonna have three sections. First one, this text container, title container, and this list container. Let's do that. Text container, title, and list. And inside this, we have this text and this line. Let's create here a p tag and HR tag. But as you realize, there is a breakpoint here. After grow, we are moving our text to other line. To do that, I can add here break, like that. And of course, we are going to be using motion. Let's import. And all these items will be motion. If you want to, you can give animation for every single items, but for me, this animation is enough. I'm giving animation for each part, but before that animation, let's create our items first. Inside this title container, I'm gonna create a div, and it's gonna include this image and this text, and one more container here, this text, and this button. Let's do that. I will close my sidebar, and I will say title, and it's going to include an image, people.png. Let me check. Okay, it's not PNG. And after that, h1 tag and this text. But as you can see, this one is bold. So let's write it like this. And one more title. This text for your business. And after this button, we don't need this image. What we do. And finally, we are going to have this list, and we are going to have 4 boxes inside. Let's create a box. This title, this text, let's create p tag, and finally a button. And it's gonna be go. So let's create 3 more items, 3 more boxes. And okay, we cannot see because this image is too big. Let's give our background first. You already know how to do this. We are gonna start with our dark color, and at the bottom it's gonna be lighter. I will just paste here. I will say height 100%. And inside we have text container, title container, and list container. Let's take care of this image after we can see better. 300, height 100, border radius will be 50 pixels, and I will say object width, cover. Okay, let's separate our items. To do that, I can use display flags, vertical flags box, and justify content will be space between. The first item will be at the beginning and the last item will be at this ending. But let's give height for each item. This title container and list container has exactly the same size, same height, but this container is a little bit smaller. To do that, I'm going to be using flex. It's going to be 1 unit. Title container will be twice bigger. And list container will be exactly the same, twice bigger. Like that. Let's take care of here. I want to see my items on the right side. If you are using display flex for the parent, you can use align self, and it's going to be flex and. Okay, perfect. Let's make them horizontal and give space between them. Display flex, align item center, and gap between items will be 20. Okay, we don't have any width for this HR tag. Let's give. It's gonna be 500. Let's decrease this border. It's gonna be thinner, border none. But I'm just gonna add border top. And it's gonna be half pixel, solid and gray. Okay, perfect. What about this text? It's a P tag, remember. Font weight will be 200 and font size will be 20 pixels. Like this. Let's change its color. Text align. Right. Okay, and what about those titles? Let's center them first. To do that, I'm going to be using display flex, but flex direction will be column. Remember, we have two titles inside this container. They are going to be vertical, and align items will be center. And what about each title? Again, display flex, they are going to be horizontal, and gap between items will be 50 pixels, like that. Let's center them vertically. Align items center. Okay, let's increase font size. After this image, I'll say H1 tag, and it's going to be really big, but the font weight will be thinner. Like that. I'm making this thinner because we are using bold. And what about this button? I'm gonna give exactly the same size that we have used here. Border radius 50 pixels and background color will be orange. I'm gonna delete the default border. It's gonna be none. Font size will be a little bit bigger and we can click. Awesome. And what about this list? It's gonna be horizontal, so we can use display flex. And for each box, I'm gonna give some padding. Perfect. But in our example, as you can see, it starts from here and ends here. It's exactly the same size that we have used for Navbar and this hero section. So I can give here maximum width. And let's center this, margin auto. And let's give border for each item. 0.5 pixels, solid and gray. Okay, let's separate those items. Inside box. Again, flex direction column, and justify content will be space between. Perfect. And finally, this button. Padding will be 10. Background color will be orange. Let's delete this border and give cursor effect. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is, when I hover over, I'm gonna change the color of this box. Let's use while hover. Actually, I'm gonna choose all these boxes and I'm gonna change them to motion div. And while hover, the background color will be gray, actually light gray. And I'm gonna change the text color and it's gonna be black. Just like this. And what about this animation? I will refresh. As you can see, all items are coming from the left side. Let's create our variants. Initial and animate, or whatever you name it. And at the beginning, X will be -500. And the opacity will be 0. If you want to, you can add here Y, scale, or any other things. And when we animate, it's gonna be 0, opacity will be 1, and Y will be 0. And let's give transition here. Duration will be 1 second. And stagger children 0.1. Let's copy this and paste here. Initial will be initial and animate will be animate. And I can use exactly the same variants for this div, this, and okay, I missed this text container. Let's refresh. Okay, there is something wrong. Oh, it's gonna be initial. Okay, but there is something wrong here because when we visit our website, let's refresh and scroll down. As you can see, our animation is already completed. To prevent this, we can use while view. Remember how to use it. Instead of animate, I can say while view. It's gonna be animate. And I'm gonna refresh. I'll wait a little bit and after I'm gonna scroll. And as you can see, it works. But also you can use one more thing here and it's gonna be useInWiew. And using this hook, we can listen a target element. In this case, it's gonna be our services div. In this case, we are gonna need useRef hook, const ref useRef. I'm gonna comment this out and ref will be ref const is in view. Using this hook, I'm gonna pass my target, and the best thing is you can give any margin here. For example, you can start in view at this point or this point or this point. Basically, you can give any margin here and you can trigger your animation after this margin. For example, if I say margin 100 pixels, it's gonna be triggered somewhere here after 100 pixels. So right now I can say animate, and if it's in view, it's gonna trigger our animation. Let's try. Refresh, scroll down, and perfect. And one more thing here, when I hover over those bold texts, I'm gonna change their colors. It's really easy. I will just use while hover and change their colors. This one is gonna be motion bold text. While hover, color will be orange. Like that. So let's copy this and do exactly the same for this one. Okay. And after this parallax, we are going to have our works. Let's see what we have. As you can see, each work has different sections. And when I scroll down or up, I'm changing this item size. So basically, again, we are going to be using scroll progress. Let's create another component. I'm going to close them. And it's going to be portfolio. I will create CSS and class name. Okay, let's use it here in our app.js. Right now, we are not going to create our portfolios one by one. Instead, I'm going to call my component here directly without section, portfolio. And inside this component, we are going to create our own sections. Oops, there is something wrong here. I forgot dot. Okay, as you can see, it's here. We cannot see it directly because we don't have any section. Firstly, let's create some items here. It's going to be an array. Let's say ID1. Title will be any project name here. I'm going to add some image and description. Let's find out some images here. I'm going to open up pexels.com. And let's create some description. I can actually create here. And copy this and paste here. Okay, let me close this sidebar. And I'm going to create 3 more items. Next.js, vanilla JavaScript app, I don't know, whatever. And let's say music app. And I'm going to change those images. Okay. So using this array, I can create different sections. To do that, I'm going to create here a function, const single, and we are going to pass here each item using this array, and we are going to take those items and return a section. And let's just write item.title. Let's use this array here, items.map. For each item, we are going to call this component, single component, and we are going to pass our item here. And of course, if you are using map, you have to add here unique key, and it's going to be item ID. Let's see. As you can see, our titles are here. And right now, each item has its own section. We are going to have this title and this progress bar. Let's create here, before this map, I will say progress, featured works, and after a progress bar. So let's use useScroll hook. I will say import, of course, motion first, and after useScroll, framer motion. Let's use it. Scroll Y progress, useScroll hook, and remember we are passing here our target. To do that we are gonna need useRef hook, const ref, useRef, and our target will be this portfolio container, because remember the size of this progress bar will be 100% at the beginning, and when I scroll down I'm gonna decrease it, and at the end of the portfolio container it's gonna be 0. So I'm gonna need something different here. Firstly, I'm gonna pass my target. Of course, inside object. And offset will be different. It's gonna be end and start. Because again, at the beginning, 100%, not 0. Let's use useTransform hook. Or if you want to, we can try something else. We can use useSpring hook. Again, it creates a transition, but the type of that transition is Spring. How we can do this? I will say const scale x, useSpring hook, and I'm gonna pass here my scroll Y progress, and right here my transition options. Remember, we can give any stiffness, and damping will be 30 pixels. Just play around here and create your own animation, and I'm gonna take this and use it here, my progress bar. I will say motion and style, and the scale X will be this scale X, like that. But if you are already using the same name, you can leave it like that. And let's give a style and see. Its class name is progress bar. Inside progress, we have an h1 tag and this progress bar. Firstly, this container will be position sticky. That because even if I scroll down or up, it always stays here. So let's say position sticky. In this case, the parent should be position relative. Let's say top 0, left 0, and I'm gonna give a padding here, 50 pixels. If you want to, you can give a background color. In this case, those items will not be visible, but I prefer using it like that. I'm not gonna give any background. Let's say text align center, and text color will be orange. Actually, let's remove this and write everything here. Font size 36 pixels. Let's see. Okay, perfect. What about this bar? It's gonna be 10 pixels and the background color will be white. Let's see. Perfect. It's that easy. Third item, last item is gonna be 0. And at the beginning, it's 100%. So what about each item? We will do exactly the same thing here. We are gonna need useScroll, but for each section. Let's come back here. and see. I'm gonna scroll. As you can see, these tags comes from bottom and going to up. And it's faster than this image. Like that. Let's firstly find out our progress and after give our style. Inner style. I'm gonna come here and again const ref, use ref hook. This time our target will be this section. Let's add here our image and texts. Instead of this title, I will say container, and inside we are gonna have our image. It's gonna be item.image. And I will create here a text container. And inside this container, we are going to have this title, description, and a button. So let's say h2 tag, item.title, p tag, item.description, and button. Let's take this progress. I'm going to copy this and paste here. I'm not going to use any offset here. And let's use useTransform hook. I will say y, useTransform. I'm going to pass here scroll y progress. And remember how we are doing this. And give here any distance. For example, I will say minus 300 to 300. After we are gonna play around here and you are gonna see the difference. And using this y, I'm gonna give inner style. Y will be y, and again we are using exactly the same name, so it's gonna be just like this. Actually, I can write it here. And I will say motion. Of course, image is too big. Let's give style first. After this progress bar, I will say container. Let's center everything. Align item center, justify content center. And for the image, I will say flex 1. And I will do the same thing for text container. Flex 1. Why I'm doing this? Because in our example, as you can see, this image and text container has exactly the same size. And I'm gonna give here a height, let's say 50%, and the object width will be cover. Okay, it's still big. That's because container doesn't have any size. Let's say 100. Okay, but as you can see, it starts from here. But in our example, we have our space here. Remember how we are fixing this? I'm just gonna come here and create here a wrapper. And I'm gonna wrap this image and this text container. Okay, I'll say wrapper. Let's wrap them. And I'm gonna give my maximum width. Height will be 100%. And I'm gonna center this using margin. Okay, perfect. And let's make this display flex. And gap between this image and text container will be 50 pixels. Okay, those images are okay, but there is something wrong with this first one. Flex 1. Actually, I can create here image container. If you are using image, I highly recommend you use image container. Let's get this here and height. In this case, I can say 100%, and it's going to contain all this container, and perfect. Okay, let's center them. We set display flex, but we didn't say align item center, just y content center. As you can see, there is something wrong here. The Y position is too low. Let's remove this for now. After we are going to add. Right now we are adding just our style. Let's come here and say display flex. Flex direction will be column. Gap between each item will be 30 pixels. And for the title, font size will be 72 pixels. For p tag, for description, color will be gray and 20 pixels. And for the button, let's see our example. As you can see, it's going to be orange. And we are going to give border radius. Border will be none. And border radius will be 10 pixels. Let's decrease its size, and also I'm going to give here a padding. Let's say 200 pixels. Perfect. And cursor will be pointer. Okay, right now we can take care of this parallax effect. This text container will be faster. Let's take this back. Okay, this position should be at the beginning. When I scroll down, it should come from bottom to top. So again, I'm gonna give here offset, and I will do exactly the same thing here. 0%, let's say 300%. In this case, it's gonna go down and it's gonna overflow. Let's make this minus, and this container will be overflow hidden. As you can see, it's going faster, but it's not what I exactly want. To prevent this, I can change my reference point. Instead of hold this section, hold this container, I can choose this image container, for example. Let's do that. I'm gonna take this here and move it here. Right now, my reference point is here, and I'm not gonna choose any point here. Let's comment this out. And right now, I can change this number. I will say minus 300 pixels to 300 pixels. Let's see. I'm gonna scroll. As you can see, this is much better. The next text container comes from bottom, and when I scroll, it goes up. Perfect. If I make this 100, it's gonna be slower. And if you make this bigger, it's gonna be much faster. But the distance will be bigger, like that. So as I said, there is no certain number here. It depends on your imagination. But for me, 300 is perfect. And one more thing we are gonna need, and it's gonna be this contact section. Firstly, we are gonna show this SVG, and after this form element. But before, let's design our component. It's really easy. We are gonna have text container and form container. Let's do that. I'm gonna close them. open up my sidebar, and inside components, I'm going to say contact. Let's import CSS. I'm going to give class name and create my contact CSS. Okay, let's call this in our application app.js, and here I will say contact component. Let's create our containers, text container and form container. Inside this text container, we are going to have this title, h1, and this title. After that, we are going to have 3 items, and each one includes a title and this text, title, text, title, text. So I will say item h2 tag. The first one will be mail, and spam will be, let's write here, any mail. And let's create other divs. Address. And finally, phone. Okay. And here we are going to create a form, and it's going to include this input, name input, email input, and this text area, and finally this button. I will say form. Inside input is going to be text, placeholder, let's say name, one more, email, of course, it's going to be email, and you can write here required, so they cannot send them without name or email, and finally a text area. You can write here any rows, let's say 8 rows, and placeholder, and I will say message. Okay, let's half close this. Perfect. And finally our button. Let's give our style. Let's open up our page. Again, I'm gonna give maximum width. Let's say height 100. And I'm gonna center this using margin. Let's separate our items. Space between. Perfect. Actually, let's give exactly the same size for this container and give space between them. So I'm gonna remove this, and I will say gap, and the text container flex 1, and form container flex 1. Oops. Okay. Let's give space between each item. To do that, I'm going to be using display flex, flex direction column, and gap between each item will be 40 pixels. And inside we have our title, font size will be 100 pixels. Perfect. But I want to reduce this space here. To do that, I'm going to be using line height, like this. For this text, what was the name? Let's check. Okay, span. Font weight will be thinner. Okay, let's see. Perfect. And let's take care of this form. As you can see, for each item, each input, we are going to have a border, and we are going to change this color, and this button will be orange. Of course, they are going to be vertical, not horizontal. Display flags, flags direction column. Let's give gap. And for input, I'm going to give some padding. I'm going to remove this background color because by default it's white. As you can see, I'm going to remove this. And I'm going to add a border. 1 pixel solid and white. And the text color will be white again. And I will say border radius 5 pixels. Okay, there is something wrong because I said form container, but it's gonna be this form. Let's close this sidebar. And it's gonna be form. Perfect. And I will do the same thing for this text area. Actually, let's write it here. Okay, awesome. And for this button, again, padding, I will say border none, and the background color will be orange. And we can click. So I will say cursor pointer. And I can increase this text. 500. Okay, right now we can give our animation. Let's create our variants here. Initial, let's say Y500. And again, opacity will be 0. And I'll say animate. It's going to be 0 and our opacity will be 1. It's going to be visible. And let's give transition here. It's going to take half second. Stagger children. The animation delay between each children will be 0.1. And right now we can use it. Let's write here motion. And I'm going to import this quickly. And I'm going to pass my variants here. And let's do the same thing for children. And maybe this h1 tag. And for each item. And I will say the initial value will be initial. And while in view, it's going to be animate. Okay, so what about here? When I refresh the page, as you can see, it shows this animation first and after our form. Let's add our SVG here. I will come here and inside this form container, I'm going to add my SVG. I just downloaded this from a website. Just search for phone, for example. Choose any icon you want and download as SVG. After, you are going to reach this resource. So what I'm going to do is wrap this SVG with a div, let's say phone or phone SVG. Let's wrap this. And it's going to be motion div. And I'm going to write here the initial animation. And it's going to be opacity and it will be 1. So I will say while in view, opacity will be 0. And let's write here a transition. Duration will be, let's say, 3 seconds. Okay, we cannot see because we don't have any color for this SVG. But if I write here a style, Inside this container, I will say font SVG. Let's give background color. As you can see, it takes 3 seconds, but this is not what I want. If I refresh the page, as you can see, it takes 3 seconds and after it disappears. So instead of duration, I'm gonna give delay, and the duration will be 1 second. In first 3 seconds, the opacity will be 1, and after this delay, it's gonna disappear in 1 second. Let's see, I'm gonna refresh. As you can see, it's here, and after 3 seconds, it's gone. So I can do the same thing for this form, and I can give position absolute, so we can see them together, this form and that SVG. Let's say position absolute. In this case, I'm gonna give position relative for the parent, and I'm gonna center this using margin auto. Okay, and let's do the same thing for this form. First 3 seconds, the opacity of this form will be 0. After that, it's gonna be 1. Let's actually copy here and paste motion form. At the beginning, it's gonna be 0, and after it's gonna be 1. But remember, it disappears after 4 seconds. 3 of them are delay and 1 second is duration. In total, it's gonna be 4. So instead of 3, I'm gonna say 4. Let's refresh. First our SVG and after our form. Perfect. So let's give a stroke for our SVG. Instead of this background color, it's gonna be orange. It's here. But how I'm gonna animate this? At the beginning, the path length of this SVG will be 0. Let's do this and you are gonna understand better. At the beginning, path length is gonna be 0. Of course, it should be motion, while in view, it's gonna be 1. And let's give transition. It's gonna take 3 seconds. Let's see. I'm gonna refresh. And there is something wrong. Because while in view doesn't work with this path, to prevent this, remember we have useInWiew hook. We can use it. Let's say const ref useRef, and our target will be this div. Whenever it's visible, it's gonna trigger this hook. Let's say is in view, and we are gonna pass here our ref. And remember, we can give here any margin, again 100 pixels, and using this I can trigger my animation. Instead of while in view, I'm gonna say animate and write here my condition if it's in view. Okay, and right now it works. Let's come here, refresh the page, and if I scroll, as you can see, it works. If you like creating this kind of websites and learn more about animations, you should definitely learn SVGs first, because once you learn, you can create anything you want. So let's take care of this form. To do that, there are many free libraries, and one of them is Email.js. It's really easy to use. Just sign in, and after that you are gonna see this dashboard. Let me zoom in. I'm gonna add new service. I'm gonna use my Gmail. Connect your account using this button. Okay, I've connected. As you can see, you can receive 500 emails every day for free. I'm gonna create service, and let's create a template. There's a default template here. Let's see. You can edit your template here. We don't need this. It's already our name. Basically, this name will be this input name. This email will be this email, and the message will be this text area message. If you want to, you can give different name for them, but it can stay like that. I'm gonna apply, and let's see how we can use it. I'm gonna come here and choose React. Firstly, we are gonna install this library. I'm gonna copy and open up my terminal, npm install email.js. And after that, we are gonna create a ref, and the target of this ref will be our form, and we are gonna pass names for each input, and inside those names we are gonna add exactly the same names. Its name, and it's gonna be name, not username. Let's do that. I'm gonna close here. Let's create another ref, form ref. Like that. Let's import. And using this function, we are gonna send our email. It's gonna be form ref. And here we are gonna add our service ID. Let's check. I'm gonna choose my account, public key. Oops, it's gonna be here. It's gonna be service ID and template ID. And if you want to, you can set here error, set error, and I'll say use state. It's gonna be false, or let's say null. If everything is okay, it's gonna be false. If not, if there's an error, it's gonna be true. And we are gonna run this function using onSubmit event, just like this. And here we can show our error. False. I'm gonna write here success. If it's not, error. Let's give our names here. It's gonna be name, email, and message. Okay, error is here, that because null is also false. Let's actually create error and success. Set success will be true. And I will say if there's an error, write here error. If it's success, write here success. Okay, let's test, but I can't click here because our SVG is over this form. To prevent this, I will say the index -1. Okay, I will say test gmail.com and hello. I will send. As you can see, it's successful. And our message is here. New message from test. This is the username, the message, the sender email. It's that easy. Okay, it's almost ready. Let's take care of this cursor. As you can see, there's a circle here. Let's create this component, and that component is gonna follow our cursor. I'm gonna create new component. Cursor JSX. Let's create our function and style. Let's create a CSS file. And let's create here a circle. I'm not gonna write anything. I'm just gonna give my style. Let's give it size. It's gonna be 50 pixels. I will say border radius is gonna be circle. Let's say border 1 pixel, solid and white. And I will say position fixed. But we are gonna change our position in this file. So I'm not gonna give any position here. Okay, that's all I think. Let's save. And let's come here. To follow our cursor position, firstly, I'm going to create here a state. I'll say const position, set position, use state hook. At the beginning, the x position will be 0, y position will be 0, of course, inside object. Let's check our example. I will refresh the page. As you can see, this is the initial point. Initial position, and after it's gonna follow our mouse. To do that, we are gonna be using useEffect hook. Let's create here a function, mouse move, and it's gonna set our state. X will be event client X. Again, I forgot object. And the Y position will be event client Y. So let's take this event. I will say window add event listener, and the event will be mouse move. And when we move it, we are gonna fire this function. Of course, if you are listening any event, you should clean up. I'm gonna write my cleanup function here. Window, I'm gonna remove this event listener. Okay, if you are using React, you should use useRef but in this case, the element will be our window, so we cannot use useRef here. We have to write add event listener. Okay, and after that, I can create my animation, but before, let's see our position, if it works or not. And let's call this inside app.js. Somewhere here. Let's see. I'm gonna open up my console, and as you can see, it gives me my position. Perfect. I can use it. I will come here and say animate. Of course, I should import motion first. Motion from framer motion. So I will say x position.x and y position.y. That's all. Let's see. Okay, it's not here. Let's remove this. By the way, I didn't add here any dependency. Okay. Let's check our style. We are using position fixed, so I should maybe give here the index. It can be under other components. Oh, that was the reason. Okay. And if you want to, you can change this position a little bit. You can give some space between your cursor and this component. So you can write here any number, for example, +10. As you can see, there is a space and it looks much better right now. Okay, so what about responsive design? It's not gonna be fully responsive, but I'm gonna show you how you can handle this. It's really easy. Don't worry. We are gonna handle for mobile screens. Let's open up mobile device here. As you can see, it looks pretty ugly for now. So let's fix it. So what I'm gonna do is create a breakpoint for the mobile devices. To do that, I'm going to open up app style, and here I'm going to create a function. I will say for mobile devices, I'm just defining my function here. And when we call this function, it's going to apply media query. Maximum width is going to be this breakpoint. And we are going to write here our content, basically our style. When we apply this, you are going to understand better. Don't worry. And you can do exactly the same thing for other devices. For example, tablet. Like that. And you can create different breakpoints. 1024. Like that. And we can call those functions everywhere. Let's start with this navbar. If you are not designing mobile first, I highly recommend you comment out your components and just leave whatever you want to fix. So I'm gonna close hero section, this parallax section, and others. I'm just gonna see my navbar. Like that. Firstly, I'm gonna remove this cursor. We don't need this. We are using our fingers. So how am I gonna use this function here? To do that, firstly, I'm gonna import my app CSS here. I will say import app.scss. Right now, I can use my mobile function here using include. And I will say mobile. And inside, I'm gonna write my style. I don't wanna see this cursor, so I will say display none. And perfect. And I can do the same thing for this logo. I don't want to see that. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. Let's copy this, open up navbar, and copy this function. And I'm going to find my logo. It's this one, remember. And again, display none. But this time, our items are here. I'm going to change this justify content. As you can see, it's space between. I'm going to write my function here, and justify content will be flex end. It's going to be at the end of the flex box. But as you can see, there is no space here. Let's add. And perfect. By the way, where is our menu? Let's check. Sidebar. It's because of this Z index or what? With, okay, that was the reason. Let's open up our mobile device. I'm gonna open up. As you can see, it contains all screen. If you want to, just leave it like that, but I prefer using the half of the screen. So let's open up sidebar. We are already in. Let's import our app CSS and one of these functions. And I'm gonna reduce this width. It's gonna be 200, like that. Of course, links are too big. As you can see, it's 40 pixels. So I'm gonna say 20 pixels. Oops, still big. Oh, I said width. It's gonna be font size. Perfect. And right now I'm gonna open up my hero section. And what I'm gonna do is changing my flex box. Let's copy this import, close everything, and open up hero section. As you can see, the width of text container is 50% and height is 100%. Right now, I'm going to change them. Include mobile. This time height will be 50% and width will be 100%. Of course, this text is too big. I'm going to copy this, and for this title, let's make it smaller. Just like this. And I'm going to center my items here and reduce this gap. It's too big. 20 pixels. Align item center and text align center. Just like this. Perfect. What about this image? Again, its height will be 50%. This is our image container. Let's write it here. Height will be 50, width will be 100%. And its position is top 0. I'm going to change it. It's going to be bottom 0. Let's say top unset. And bottom will be 0. But it's not here. There is something wrong. We have image container. Inside we have image, but we didn't give any width and height. Cover. Oh, okay, it's here. Perfect. What about this text? We can remove this or it can stay. It can stay actually. It looks nice. So what about other sections? Let's open up this section. As you can see, this screen doesn't contain our images, and also this text is too big. Let's copy this and open up our CSS file and import. And this function, let's copy and paste for this H1. It's gonna be, let's say, 72. And I can center this. Perfect. Let's contain our screen with those images. I will say background size is gonna be contain, not cover. And as you can see, it's repeating right now. To prevent this, I will say background repeat and no repeat. Okay, perfect. It's a little bit small, but anyway, if you want to, you can do this for other images, other background images. Right now they are here. Stars can stay like that. Let's check our effect, if it works or not. To do that, I'm going to open up other parallax here. And as you can see, awesome, it works. So let's open up services section. Again, let's copy this import, open up services like that. And I'm going to copy this function. And let's see what we have. As you can see, nothing is visible here. Let's take care of the first part. I'm going to open up my JSX file, and this is our first part. So I'm going to close here and this list. Okay, it's still not visible. Firstly, I'm going to center everything inside my text container, because remember, we are using flex and here. They are on the right side. So I will say align self and center and text align center. And the flex direction will be column. because it was horizontal at the beginning, but this time it's going to be vertical. Okay, they are not here. Let's check our services component. Okay, at the beginning, x is minus 500. For that reason, our component is not in view because our screen is much smaller. We cannot see our component and it will not trigger our animation. To prevent this, you can decrease this number or you can remove this animation, whatever you want. Let's remove this for now. And let's reduce this HR width. It's too big. It's 500 pixels, but it's gonna be 300. Okay, let's open up others. Maybe for now only this one. Let's check. Oh, it's huge. Let's decrease. For this title container, I will say 100%. And this title will be vertical. It's horizontal right now. I will say flex direction is gonna be column. Text align center. Oops, center. And gap is too much. Let's say 20. Okay, it's centered, but we didn't reduce this number. Let's come here. As you can see, it's 96. It's gonna be 36. Perfect. And let's reduce this image and button size. Let's say 250. Perfect. And this one, font size will be smaller, and let's say 150. Okay, it looks nice. And let's open up our list. Okay, it's horizontal. Let's make this vertical. I'm gonna come here and say flex direction column, and again 100%. Okay, our boxes are too big. Actually, we can delete those descriptions. Inside box, we have p tag. Remember, it's our description. And I will say display none. Just like this. Let's remove those borders. Border will be none. Perfect. But those buttons are a little bit strange. Actually, I can change this background color and I can add a border. It's gonna be transparent, but I'm gonna add border. 1 pixel, solid, and orange. Maybe a little bit. Border radius, 5 pixels. Perfect. Let's change this color also. And I'm gonna reduce its width. It's gonna be 50%. Okay. Let's center them. Inside this box, I will say align item center. Perfect. I'm gonna give gap between them. But this space is too much. As you can see, padding is 50 and it's gonna be 20 or maybe 10. Okay, I can do the same thing for this button. It's too big. It's 10. Let's say 5 and it's much better right now. It's not perfect, but I'm just showing you how you can handle responsive design. It's that easy, guys. Just include your function and play around here and change your components. Okay. What about, where is our app.js? Here. What about portfolio? What I can do, I can move this progress bar to here at bottom. I'm gonna come here, here, and open up portfolio. And let's copy any of those functions. And as you can see, top is 0 and there's a padding here. And I'm gonna increase this padding top. To do that, I'm gonna be using calculate. Let's say 50 pixels. Let's try. And this font size is too big. Let's say 24. Okay, it's not visible. Let's say 100. And perfect. Why I am doing this? Why I am not using bottom 0? Because remember, inside portfolio, for each project, we are using a section. So if I say bottom 0, it's going to be visible at the end of the portfolio container, somewhere here, not for other works. This is why I'm using padding top. Okay, we cannot see our image because it's horizontal. Let's change it. Inside wrapper, I will say flex direction, column. It's going to be vertical. And here, I will say with 100%, and let's give maximum height 300, for example, like this. And I can change my object fit. It was cover. I can say contain because our image is smaller right now. And what about this text? Firstly, I'm gonna remove this animation. To do that, I'm gonna come here, text container, and I will say transform none, and I will say important, and it's gonna override framer motion. As you can see, we don't have any animation right now. And let's take care of this size. And also I can give here a padding. Let's center everything. And this font size is too big. 36. And maybe this one also. Perfect. It looks really nice. And finally, let's open up our contact section. Import app CSS. And copy this function. As you can see, again, it's horizontal and we cannot see our form. Let's come here and say 100%. I'm going to give some padding and flex direction will be column. Let's take care of this text container. I'm going to reduce this gap and center everything. Text align center. Align items, and let's give margin here. And as you can see, it's too big again. Let's reduce. Perfect. And for this form, I can decrease this input padding. And for this button, but why it's not 100%? Let's check. Sorry for this form container. Okay, let's say 100%. And I can give some padding here. Of course, I didn't use my function. Let's move this here. And padding is gonna be, let's say, 50. Okay, I can delete this background. And perfect. This is how you can design your application for different devices. You can use different breakpoints as we created here. You can use them and make your application fully responsive. But right now you know how to do that. So we are ready to deploy our application. To do that, let's close everything and open up our terminal. And I will just say npm run build. And if you check your folder structure, you are gonna see this folder. And inside we have all our images, CSS file, JavaScript, and the main HTML file. Only thing we should do is upload them into our hosting. Let's open up our Hostinger panel, and I'm gonna choose File Manager. And inside public HTML, there is a default file. If you visit your website, you are gonna see this default page. Let's remove this. I'm gonna click here. And I'm gonna upload my files here. Let's drag and drop our files. And that's all. Let's refresh the page. And perfect. It's here. And it works as we expected. And we are using a free SSL certificate, and the connection is secure right now. We didn't have to install anything, we didn't have to make any configuration. Everything is ready to use. Let's check our menu. Okay. So that's all. I hope you liked it. If you learned something new today, please like the video. If you want to support Lama Dev, you can use the link in the description below, or you can join the channel. Don't forget to follow Lama Dev's social media accounts. I hope I will see you in the next tutorial. Goodbye.